Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Robertson and welcome to another channel update video, this time for Spring 2021. As many of you have probably noticed by now, my channel has just passed 2,000 subscribers, which is something that I am indeed very grateful for, especially to all the genuine people out there that have subscribed in order to give their support for the channel and the content I'm creating for it. Sadly, I am however fully expecting this number to drop back down again within a few months' time, because as I mentioned in an earlier post, a lot of the attention I've gotten recently seems to have been caused by someone who posted a link to my video regarding turret placement on one of the online gaming forums. And from the sounds of things, they didn't do it out of generosity, but rather they were just trying to get people to post to my channel in order to troll, disagree, and argue for the sake of arguing with me. So once the armchair commandos and no-life geeks that are looking to cause mischief eventually get bored and realise that I'm just deleting their non-constructive comments, they'll just unsubscribe and go elsewhere, where they're more likely to get a rise out of someone. The good news is that along with the chaff, we have also managed to grab a couple of new people that seem to be a good fit with the more regular viewers on this channel, which is always a good thing, and it's something that both I and my other viewers and subscribers here are eternally grateful for. What I will have to remind my more recent followers and subscribers is that I am not a full-time YouTuber, and I would recommend that you watch the video I recently published that's called My Channel and My Content, as it does go into a little more detail about both myself and the channel. Basically, I just do this as a hobby, and as such there can be long delays between each video I release, sometimes even months. And that the recent videos I've been uploading regarding sci-fi spacecraft weaponry and the occasional warship battle are the exception rather than the rule, and are to help entertain many of my current subscribers that are finding the current COVID-19 lockdown to be quite difficult. But I do have one more Space Engineers series planned for later this year, or early next year depending on my free time, so there's always that to look forward to as well. Speaking of Space Engineers, Keen have released another DLC pack recently, and the expected shinies that you have to pay extra for, but unlike the last couple of DLC packs, there have actually been some very useful new additions this time around, and I've actually paid for the extra content this time, as there's several new blocks that I've already made good use of. With the title Warfare 1 Field Engineer, this release focuses on the player character's combat and adds 3 new pistols and 2 rocket launchers, along with some new sounds and animations. As mentioned earlier, there's also several new blocks, including some new barricades, a target dummy that resets after you shoot it, and best of all, new passageway blocks, including one with a built-in light, allowing you to create some really nifty 1-block wide airtight corridors between each section of your base or spacecraft. My only real complaint is that I would have preferred the passageway blocks to have had a floor built into them, making them completely airtight without needing another block underneath them. And while we've got a passageway with a light, I'd have also liked to have seen a passageway with a door at the end, or possibly even one with an air vent, as this would save so much space when creating some of the more compact vessels. As mentioned in my previous video, this is apparently the first in a series of updates that's looking to improve combat in Space Engineers, and as many of you have been watching this channel over the last few years will no doubt be aware of, this is something that I've been pushing Keen to do for quite some time, even going so far as mentioning it on several of my channel update videos and even posting it on both their channel and the Space Engineer suggestion board. Whether or not they were able to add new blocks or change the core gameplay to significantly improve on the ship-to-ship combat remains to be seen, but given the quality of their most recent DLC, suffice to say that I'm quietly optimistic. In other news, Avorion Update 2.0 is apparently just around the corner, and with it comes a whole slew of improvements, including a new interface with improved UI visuals, improvements to the independent targeting of your turrets, now they'll no longer deal minus 50% damage, allowing you to focus more on flying your ship or manually firing your more powerful weapons instead. New captain classes, along with their own unique set of perks that provide bonuses and even quirks that can plague your hired captains during the course of the game. And also a new progression system that means you'll now also have to unlock the knowledge about each new material that you find before you're able to use it when building your ships. I haven't played Avorion in several months now, but when update 2.0 comes out, I'll definitely have to take another look to see how this incredible game has changed. As expected, Stormworks Build and Rescue has been getting a lot of love from its development team lately, with not only AI-controlled boats being added into the mix, but we can also now expect to see AI planes and helicopters flying around the world. Of course, you'll need to start a new game from scratch and add their modules into the world before they'll work, but once you do, the world of Stormworks will now have the occasional boat and air traffic going about their daily business, making the game world feel that much more alive. The devs have also added some new monitor sizes, including 1x2, 1x3, 2x3 and even 3x3 into the game, so for those of you looking for wider screen sizes or a giant 3x3 screen to use as a navigation chart, then this should definitely suffice. Also mentioned as something that's coming very soon is both coal power and modular nuclear reactors, both of which will be used to heat steam, which will in turn be used to power turbines and provide locomotion to many of your creations in-game. There's still no further news on the DLC that will add weapons into Stormworks yet, but you can be rest assured that the devs will post something about that soon enough, so this is definitely one to keep a close eye on, as it really is proving to be a labour of love for the devs, and as always, I look forward to hearing about what they're planning to add next. In Arma 3 news, there has been a recent announcement that an upcoming Vietnam War creator DLC made by the third-party developer Savage Game Design in conjunction with Bohemia Interactive will be out within the next few months. Titled SOG Prairie Fire, this third-party DLC will see you transported back to the height of the Vietnam War as a member of the Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group, which was a special US Forces unit established in 1964 in order to conduct covert operations in Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia. As well as featuring units from that time period and theatre of operations, it will also come with a unique 300 square kilometre terrain called Cam Lao Nam, which you will no doubt get to explore in extensive detail in both the 9 co-op multiplayer and 5 single-player scenarios. Ideal for all those older US veterans from my parents' generation that are looking to relive some of the glory, or more likely, the horrors of Nam, or for the younger ones that enjoy trekking through the dense jungle and rice paddies, trying to avoid ambushes and booby traps in equal measure, all the while being forced to endure the continuous playing of Stop Children What's That Sound and Fortunate Son over the FOB's radio. Seriously though guys, this one certainly looks like the developers have paid particular attention to all the right details, and I look forward to seeing how it plays on release, or at the very least watching someone else playing it on YouTube. Anyway, that's enough about games for now, so without further ado, it's time for this update video's Q&A session. The first question comes from SirenX, who asks, what do you think about the latest Space Engineers DLC? Well, as luck would have it, I've already covered that earlier in this video, where I do go into a little more detail regarding the latest DLC. What I will add, however, is that I can't help but notice that this sudden renewed interest by Keen in improving the combat side of Space Engineers seems to have come about following the massive increase in popularity of the Weapon Corps tournaments, organised by Zocli and a few others. And in a way, it's a shame that they needed to rely so heavily on the modding community to make them see how much potential there was in the combat side of Space Engineers, especially when so many high-profile content creators and community members have been pretty much saying this for years. But I have to admit, it is good to see that things are finally progressing in the right direction. I just hope they don't screw it up. Well, even if they do, I suppose that'll be something else for the modding community to fix. Now the next question, which is actually a very interesting one, comes from Colleen K, who asks, you sound like you're from the UK, but you pronounce words like a fellow Canadian. Why do you say sitting and standing instead of was sat or was stood? Now this one actually took me a few seconds to realise what it was she was talking about, before it finally hit me. The answer to your question is, the reason why I speak that way is because I'm still using correct English. Or rather, I am one of the last of the Generation Xers that was brought up to use correct tense. which is surprisingly something that most Americans and Canadians still do, but sadly something that started to vanish from the average English speaker in the UK, especially over the last 5 to 10 years. And it's actually more than a little concerning that people from outside the UK seem to think that it's normal for us to speak this way now. For those of you here that don't understand Colleen's question, essentially she's noticed that instead of saying "I'm standing here" or "I'm sitting here" when describing what they're doing, a lot of people in the UK, England especially, now say "I am stood here" or "I am sat here" instead. And when using past tense, they'll say something like "I was stood" or "I was sat" instead of just stood or sat. All of those are completely wrong and are considered bad English. To give you guys an American example, it's a bit like someone saying to you, "I gone done did it," or "I'll brung it with me," or something equally as horrendous. About 10 years ago, it was usually only kids or people from Yorkshire that spoke that way, and they were usually given a quick smack over the back of the head and told to speak properly, the Yorkshiremen at least. But it's becoming more common throughout the UK now, and I'm noticing that people from all walks of life are doing it, including professional YouTubers, which, to be honest, does make me cringe whenever I notice it. As to why, well, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's most likely a combination of things including laziness, ignorance, and poorer standards of education. The only time it's really acceptable to say "I was sat at the table" or "I was stood outside" is when you're talking about someone actually forcing you to sit or stand somewhere, usually threateningly, possibly at gunpoint. As for myself, well, I'll continue to make an effort to speak correctly. I owe it not just to myself, but to all the people that have taught me over the years, from nursery, school, through to the academy, and finally college. Besides, being well spoken means that you do sound a lot more professional, not just when you're recording a YouTube video, but also when you're giving a presentation to other people. The next question comes from Cute Snake, who asks, "In your own opinion, how realistic are the ships from the Expanse series?" Well, to be honest, Cute Snake, compared to almost all of the current science fiction spacecraft I've seen on movies, television series, and even most games, the ships featured on the Expanse are among the most realistic I've seen so far, and use a lot of the ship design methodology and weapon placement that I've mentioned in some of my more recent videos. Now, the reason why this is, and indeed the reason why the ships featured in the Expanse are so realistic, is because the authors of the books and main consultants on the TV series, namely Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham, have done their research when they created their universe and began writing the book series. And more recently, they had other consultants brought in, including people like Naren Shankar, who has a PhD in physics, involved in the TV series to make sure that everything is as realistic as possible without it getting in the way of the story or pushing them over budget. But you'll also have to remember that because it's a TV show, the Expanse will never be 100% realistic, but so far it's enough that it comes across as being far more plausible, especially compared to the rest of the competition. As you would expect though, this will always annoy the fans of other games and TV series, and I've already removed countless comments on my own channel that have been held for review that are nothing more than people just whining and complaining about how ugly the ships in the Expanse are, especially when compared to the likes of Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, or Star Wars. But as far as I'm concerned, just because a ship looks realistic doesn't mean it's ugly, it just means it looks practical, which in turn means it's most likely to have been created by an engineer rather than by an artist. In fact, it was another content creator, who shall remain nameless, that went off on a rant a few weeks ago, mainly about how the ships that people like Tidier, Malmarid, Papel2 and myself champion and release on the Steam Workshop just look too much like the ships from the Expanse. They're too realistic, they're not aesthetically pleasing, and they aren't real works of art. Not like the ones that they released to their supporters on their Patreon page. Now, I will admit a lot of his anger may have been due to the fact that I had earlier pointed out the flaws in one of his spaceship designs, but after his little tantrum, I just smiled and simply replied saying, "Thanks, but I think I'll stick with my realistically designed spacecraft, thank you very much. I want to get rich selling something made by a dead artist, not made dead buying something from a rich one." Which was pretty much the end of that conversation. The next question comes from Jim Hardy, who asks, did I hear you correctly when you mentioned that there's another season of Into the Unknown coming out? And the answer to that is, no, you did mishear, because the Into the Unknown series has concluded. It's finished. It's over, as in no more. What I have mentioned, on more than one occasion, if you'd been paying attention, is that I do have another Space Engineer series planned. And if all goes well, it should be starting either later this year or early next year. It will still feature most of the characters from the last series, but it will be called something different this time around because, in essence, it's a new story. In fact, those of you who found the Easter egg on the Season 3 world save, or at the end of the main story on the Dark Revelations world, will already know what it's going to be called. So if you haven't already checked those out, then please feel free to do so. What will most likely happen is that you'll get a teaser video or two before the actual series itself begins, so you should have plenty of warning. The next question comes from Ed Gunny, who asks, "Why are the rest of my comments not showing up on your channel?" Well, that's most likely because either I or one of my mods have deleted them. That's right, any posts on this channel that are either full of expletives, that means swearing for all you teenagers out there, that are abusive, inflammatory, or just filled with comments that are opinionated drivel and are attempting to drag people into an argument, will just be removed. Only constructive comments, which includes constructive criticism, support, or ideas being bounced around by other content creators, will be tolerated. As I've said before, this is a comment section that should relate to the video in question and the topics being discussed on it. This is not a gaming forum, and I certainly don't have the time to read through an armchair commando's wall of text that they've typed about how wrong I am about everything. And I have even less time, and even less patience, to give those sorts of sad bastards any kind of reply. Now, if someone is serious about wanting to have an in-depth discussion with me, or bounce around some ideas that's going to take up more than a couple of paragraphs in the comment section, then they'll need to send me either an email or message me directly. But if I don't know who they are, then they'll need to back up what they're suggesting with facts and sources. Again, a content creator is more likely to get my attention than someone who's just a mere gamer. However, people that just want to post their own subjective opinions on the comment section for everyone to see, or to troll people just to get some kind of reaction and an ego boost, aren't even worth my time. And to be frank, they really need to take a long hard look at themselves in the mirror and ask why they're wasting what precious time they have with such petty, pointless crap that's just going to make them even more miserable in the long run, when they could be using all that time and energy actually doing something meaningful and constructive with their lives. You see, what you trolls need to realise is that your opinions, well, they're pretty much meaningless to me. I have a quick chuckle and then I delete them. Thankfully, unlike my old Baraban gaming channel, I would have to say that at least 95% of my followers and subscribers here are what I would call good people. They're mature, for the most part, welcoming and tolerant of others, and I think that's absolutely incredible, and it makes both posting content and interacting with the people on this channel an absolute joy. And most importantly, it means that the rest of you guys can enjoy this too. And if that means I have to get tough on trolls in order to keep the existing community, even at the expense of potential subscriptions, then you can be damn sure I will. The next question comes from Demon Eyes, who asks, "Some of the ships you released on the workshop look differently to how they used to. Why?" And the answer to that is because they've been updated since the original upload. I've had to make changes to both the Gunstar and Starcruiser series to take into account the fact that the keen fratricidal Gatling turret bug has come back, as well as to move some of the internal components around to make them less likely to take damage during battle. I will quite often revisit content I've posted on the workshop every 4 to 6 months, just to make sure everything still works and that all the scripts are up to date, especially after a recent patch. I always make sure I add changelog notes whenever possible, so if you're not sure what's changed since the last time you downloaded, it's always best to check those first to make sure. The next question comes from Ryan Coe, who asks, "Is there any more news on the Pegasus hydrofoil?" And the answer to that is yes, it's coming along, just very, very slowly, as I've had to put it on hold temporarily until the weapon DLC for Stormworks comes out, just to see what kind of options I've got available. When I last left it, most of the lower deck had been completed and I was just about to tackle the modular engines and see if I could get away with using the reverse of how the real life Pegasus's water jets worked. Now the reason why is because in the actual Pegasus hydrofoil it uses one large water jet when foil borne and two smaller ones when it's back down on its hull, usually when manoeuvring to dock or refuel. Unfortunately, Stormworks only has one size of water jet, which is small, so I might end up using just two when foil borne and one when it isn't, which should work fine, but it'll just look weird. Who knows, maybe later this year the devs might give us different strengths and sizes of water jets. We'll just have to wait and see. The next question comes from Miss Tina02, who asks, have you seen Vintage Story, and if you have, what do you think of it? Actually, I have seen a few videos of it, and it does look very similar to the original Terra Firma craft. And I might even take a look at it in more depth further down the line, but right now I'm just too busy working on so many other things. What I will say is that if it ends up being more stable than TFC, has a solid gaming loop, storyline, and the same incredible modding support, then I'll definitely be checking it out in the next few years. I'm still very conscious of the fact that my last Terra Firma craft series was cut off abruptly and left unfinished. Even now I'm still trying to figure out how it can be salvaged and given something of a half-decent ending. So watch this space because, you never know, I may just get the urge to finish it one day. Well, that once again concludes this session's Q&A segment and also tonight's channel update video. Hopefully, I'll be able to release another one at some point in the summer. But before I leave, I would just like to take the time out to once again thank all of my viewers out there, and especially all of my amazing followers and subscribers. I really do appreciate all the support you guys have shown, not just to me, but to everyone else that's joined us on this channel. And I look forward to seeing you all again in the next video. So, until the next time, this is Robertson, signing off.